Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Wendy Kay, and today we are getting started with part 1 of my micro-learning series, Hacking Remote Leadership. Part 1 is all about making a plan. Whether you have gone remote already and you might be thinking about going back to work, or you're thinking of doing this in a more long-term basis, I think it's just as good of a time to think about what's the plan to create the best remote culture for your team and yourself. So this plan doesn't have to be complicated. One of the things that I talked about in my introduction is that these videos are short on purpose so that you could easily watch them anytime you want, and that they're actionable and there's something just really digestible. So in order to do that for yourself, you need to start with that plan of what kind of remote culture you want. What is it that's priority for you and your team to make remote work possible? What are you noticing right now? Is the team culture suffering? Is productivity the issue? Performance the issue? Are you sensing that people are losing touch or feeling disengaged? These are just outcomes of all the things that may be going wrong with remote work. That may be a sign that there's not enough structure or that you haven't defined clearly what the expectations are. So just as important as for you to make a plan, I think this is also the process for you to include your team. Have a conversation with them, hear them out. What are they saying? What are they seeing? What are they experiencing around remote work? And what do they think is really important? When you think about categorizing your plans for remote work and all the things that you need to do, all the activities you need to plan to make remote work a success for you and your team, I think there's a simple grid that you can use to really help you categorize your thinking. So here we see a grid where the columns are categorized by urgent and not urgent, and the rows of important and not important. And you see how those two can interact, right? You have the urgent and important, important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and then the not important, not urgent. I think this is really helpful for any time throughout the day as you go about your day-to-day operations. But this, I think, can also be really helpful as you think about what do you need to be doing as you create this plan for remote work. You could be doing so many things, right? There's so much advice out there, but you really have to prioritize. Now let's take a little bit more of a more specific example. So I'll just take kind of my work experience. So at any given time, at any given day, things pop up where you have all these interactions of whether it's urgent or important or not urgent, but it's important. And I want to be able to distinguish what urgency really means. So let's look at something that's not urgent but important. So I think that relationship building is one of the most important things you can do in your career, right? It's important when you first start out in a new job. It's important to sustain success through a project. And it's important if you want to go deeper into your expertise. It's important if you want to rise up in your career. But is it always urgent to be relationship building? Meaning, is it something that will make my life fall apart if I don't do it this minute or this hour? It's one of those things that's really important because it's a long-term marathon. It's not something that can be done really quickly. It's not something that can be done with reactivity. And there are things that are seemingly very urgent, but not always important, right? We often get those phone calls throughout the day and those emails that we must respond to that minute or that hour. And they seem to be really urgent, but in all fairness, they may not be super important. Maybe not to us, or maybe not even to the other person, but they just came through as with the appearance that they are very urgent. It could be, hey, Wendy, I need you to send me that report because I need to submit my report later this day, and I need to complete it by this one information that you have in your report. That seems really urgent because the other person had a deadline, but it was not necessarily an important part of my day, or did it contribute into part of a larger project. Now, this doesn't mean that it's not important for them. It just means that when I think about my priorities and the things that I can impact throughout the day, it's important to just at least distinguish what's important, what's urgent. And then, of course, the things that we always need to pay attention to are the things that are urgent and important at the same time. This could be the crisis, like what we saw with the pandemic, right? The crisis happened. We were in chaos and we had to move everybody really quickly to a work from home basis. It was urgent and it was important for people's safety and well being. And then also closing out projects that has a really tight deadline, right? It has a very close time frame and you need to work towards it. It's urgent and it's also important because maybe the project is aligned to some strategic initiative. And then there are things that are not important and not urgent. And I think it's really just as important to be able to recognize what falls in this bucket, because these are the things that you could probably ultimately deprioritize or eliminate. And these are the things that are like the busy work, right? They could be in the form of a phone call. These are some of the emails that you get, and just really activities throughout the day that waste your time. All of you can think of something right now that's in your work life that could be part of this category. And you, as a leader, I think it'd be really important for you to identify when you make this plan to get people to work remote successfully. What are some things that are really important and really urgent? What are things that are important but maybe doesn't need to be done right now? And what are some things that really won't create a huge impact, won't bring a lot of value, but might take a lot of time and waste people's time? As you make your plan, make sure you're keeping certain things into consideration. For example, does everyone have the necessary tools and technology in place so that they can work together? What about communication norms? Have you taken the time for you and your team to set up new expectations for those? Individual readiness and also comfort with remote work. That's usually one of the first things that come up. Usually you'll hear people say, yay, I get to work from home all the time. And then there are folks who will say, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss my colleagues so much. I hate working alone. And with that is also the individual life circumstances. We've been hearing that this is not simply a work from home situation. We are all in quarantine and also taking on extra responsibilities to taking care of our elderly, taking care of children, homeschooling children, and also working. So take that into consideration as you come up with your plan for remote work. And also be thinking about team culture, thinking about the team dynamics, right? There's no more water cooler chats. There's no more passing each other in the hall and saying hi, goodbye, and just or peeking over each other's cues or over each other's desks to ask a quick question. So in the absence of that, when these things don't happen organically anymore in the remote space, in the remote world, how are you going to help your team to regain some of that connection with each other? And also in terms of productivity and performance, it's really important as a leader anyway to be setting those expectations and being very clear, but you also need to be clear with yourself and having this conversation with your team. What are reasonable expectations right now? For many people, this move to remote work was not an easy transition. Maybe it's because of their individual life circumstances or for their personality, or maybe it's just because they don't necessarily have the resources to make work from home optimal. So you may be expecting that some productivity, performance, or engagement might slip a little in the beginning. So you need to reset with yourself too on what your expectations are, and always have those conversations with your team. Some of these things, you are the role model. Yes, you are the leader. You need to be setting what those base expectations are. But oftentimes, you're going to get a lot more buy-in if you've had those conversations and getting agreement with your team members as well. And finally, to make this plan a success, you really need to include your people here. You could have the best plan in the world, but if people are not bought in because they don't think that you were hearing their voices, it's probably not going to work the way that you want it to. You could have the best plan in the world, and people still need to know that you had their concerns in mind, that your expectations incorporated their needs too. So think about how you want to gather feedback. Think about how you want to gather their input throughout this process, and make sure that you are taking consideration for how you want to adapt your plan based on what people are saying. Make this a collaborative process. Be the role model, be the facilitator, and try to take control by holding people together and creating the structure, but making sure that the components of this new structure and the culture work for everyone on your team. Well, folks, that was part one. Let me know if you tried anything and what you think. Drop me a comment, email me. Next up, in part two, we're going to be talking about being an authentic leader. And I know it's such a buzzword, authenticity, right? But we're going to try to put some action around it, again, making it actionable for you. And even though we don't dive super deep in all the things that we're going to talk about, it'll give you a good high-level overview so you know what to do to get started. Once again, like this video if it resonated with you, share it with someone that you think this could help, subscribe to my channel so that you will know when the next video comes out. And my name is Wendy Kay. Thank you again for watching this micro learning series.